A child screamed when she walked in, not from fear, from recognition. "That's Marilyn Monroe!" 50 orphans froze. The staff panicked. Nobody had been warned. Nobody knew why the world's biggest star had just appeared in their broken-down cafeteria. What she did in the next 60 minutes made every single person in that building cry. It was December 12th, 1954, at the Hollygrove Orphanage on North El Centro Avenue in Los Angeles. The building was old, the paint was peeling, and the heating barely worked. 50 children, ages 5 to 14, sat at long wooden tables eating watery oatmeal for breakfast. Then the door opened. A woman in a simple gray coat and headscarf stepped inside. She carried a large shopping bag. No cameras followed her. No bodyguards flanked her. She was completely alone. 8-year-old Tommy Barnes was the first to notice her. He dropped his spoon. His eyes went wide. That's Marilyn Monroe. 10-year-old Sarah Chen finished his sentence, her voice rising to a shriek. The cafeteria erupted. Children jumped from their seats. Staff members rushed forward, confused and alarmed. Mrs. Patterson, the orphanage director, nearly fainted. "Miss Monroe?" Mrs. Patterson stammered. We didn't know you were coming. We weren't informed." Marilyn removed her headscarf, and that famous blonde hair tumbled down. She smiled, but there was something different about this smile. It wasn't the practiced Hollywood smile. It was softer, sadder, more real. "I know," Marilyn said quietly. "I didn't want you to be informed. I just wanted to come." Mrs. Patterson was speechless. In 20 years of running the orphanage, she'd never had a celebrity visit, and certainly never unannounced. "Why?" Mrs. Patterson finally asked. Marilyn looked around the cafeteria, at the cracked walls, the donated furniture, the thin blankets stacked in the corner, the children staring at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Because I lived here," Marilyn said simply, "from 1935 to 1937, right here, in this building." The room went silent. Nobody knew this, not the press, not the studio. Marilyn Monroe's past was carefully hidden, rewritten, sanitized for Hollywood consumption. The world knew her as the glamorous blonde bombshell. They didn't know about Norma Jean Baker, the little girl who'd spent 2 years in this very orphanage, feeling invisible and unwanted. Mrs. Patterson's hand flew to her mouth. You were one of ours?" Marilyn nodded. "I slept in the dormitory upstairs. 3rd bed from the window. I used to lie awake at night and watch the cars go by outside, imagining where they were going, imagining what it felt like to have someone waiting for you at home." A small girl named Lucy, no more than 6 years old, stepped forward tentatively. "Did you feel sad here?" Marilyn knelt down to Lucy's eye level. "I felt invisible, like nobody saw me, like I didn't matter." "That's how I feel," Lucy whispered. Marilyn pulled the little girl into a hug. "I know, sweetheart. I know." That's when she opened the shopping bag. Inside were 50 teddy bears. Not expensive ones, not fancy ones, just simple, soft bears, each one exactly the same. Marilyn had bought them herself that morning at a toy store on Sunset Boulevard. "When I was here," Marilyn explained, pulling out the first bear, "I had one toy. Just one. A little stuffed dog that someone donated. I loved that dog more than anything in the world. And then one day it disappeared. Someone took it or it got thrown away. I never knew. And I cried for a week." She handed the first bear to Lucy. "I don't want any of you to feel what I felt. So these are yours, and nobody can take them away." What happened next was chaos and beauty mixed together. Marilyn moved through the cafeteria, giving each child a bear, but she didn't just hand them out. She stopped at each child. She asked their names. She asked about their favorite things. She listened. To 9-year-old Marcus, who was afraid he'd never be adopted because of his stutter, Marilyn said, "Some of the most interesting people I know take their time with words. That means you think before you speak. That's a gift." To 12-year-old Elena, who was ashamed of her hand-me-down clothes, Marilyn said, "You know what makes you beautiful? Not your clothes, the way you helped that younger girl tie her shoes when she was struggling. That's real beauty. To 7-year-old Daniel, who hadn't smiled in 6 months since his parents died, Marilyn sat on the floor and told him jokes until he laughed. It took 15 minutes. But when that laugh finally came, the entire room felt it. Mrs. Patterson watched in stunned silence as the most famous woman in the world sat on the dirty floor of her orphanage, giving more attention to these forgotten children than anyone ever had. But Marilyn wasn't done. "I want to see the dormitory," she said, "the one where I slept." Mrs. Patterson led her upstairs. The children followed, creating a parade of 50 kids clutching their new teddy bears. The dormitory was exactly as Marilyn remembered it. Rows of metal beds with thin mattresses, one shared bathroom, no privacy, no warmth, no personal space. Marilyn walked to the third bed from the window. She sat down on it slowly, running her hand over the rough blanket. "This was mine," she said quietly. "I used to dream that someone would come get me. That a family would walk through that door and say, 'We want Norma Jean. We choose her.' But nobody ever came." 10-year-old Sarah, the girl who'd first screamed Marilyn's name, sat down beside her. "Did you stop hoping?" Marilyn looked at Sarah with tears in her eyes. "No. I never stopped hoping. And that's what I want you to know. Don't stop hoping, even when it hurts, even when it feels impossible. Because I was sitting right here 20 years ago, feeling exactly what you're feeling, and look at me now." "But you're special," Sarah said. "You're Marilyn Monroe." Marilyn shook her head. "I'm Norma Jean. I'm the girl who slept in this bed and felt invisible. I'm just like you. And if I can make it out of here, so can you. All of you." She stood up and addressed all 50 children. "I want to make you a promise. I can't adopt all of you. I wish I could, but I can't. But I promise you this. I will never forget you. I will never forget this place. And I will do everything in my power to make sure you have chances that I never had." Then Marilyn did something that shocked even Mrs. Patterson. She pulled out her checkbook and wrote a check right there in the dormitory. She handed it to Mrs. Patterson. The director looked at the amount and gasped, "Miss Monroe, this is $10,000. "It's a start," Marilyn said. "I want you to use it for better beds, warmer blankets, books, art supplies, whatever these kids need to feel like they matter." Mrs. Patterson started crying. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll take care of them. Say you'll make sure they know they're not invisible." "I promise," Mrs. Patterson whispered. But Marilyn still wasn't finished. She spent the next hour with those children. She didn't rush. She didn't check her watch. She sat on the floor of that dormitory and told them stories about her life. Not the glamorous parts, the real parts. She told them about the foster homes where she wasn't wanted, the families who took her in for the monthly check but never for love, the feeling of packing and unpacking her small suitcase, never belonging anywhere. "But here's what I learned," Marilyn said. "Your past doesn't define your future. Where you start doesn't determine where you finish. I started here in this room feeling like nobody, and I became somebody, not because I'm special, but because I refused to believe the lie that I didn't matter." 13-year-old Robert, who'd been in the system since he was 3, raised his hand. "Do you still feel invisible sometimes?" Marilyn paused. It was the most honest question anyone had asked her in years. "Yes," she admitted. "Even now, even with all the fame, sometimes I still feel like that little girl in bed number 3 wondering if anyone really sees me. But you know what helps? Remembering where I came from, remembering kids like you, because you see the real me, not Marilyn Monroe, the movie star, just me." As the hour drew to a close, Marilyn stood to leave. But before she could go, Lucy, the small 6-year-old who'd been first to hug her, tugged on her coat. "Will you come back?" Lucy asked, clutching her teddy bear. Marilyn knelt down one more time. "I promise, and I keep my promises." She did. Over the next 8 years until her death in 1962, Marilyn Monroe visited the Hollygrove Orphanage 23 times, always unannounced, always without press. She paid for renovations. She funded a library. She established a scholarship fund for kids aging out of the system. But more than the money, she gave them something priceless: the belief that they mattered. Marcus, the boy who stuttered, went on to become a public speaker, helping other children with speech difficulties. Marilyn told me my stutter was a gift, he said in a 2003 interview. She made me believe it, and she was right. Elena, the girl who was ashamed of her clothes, became a fashion designer who created affordable clothing lines for underprivileged children. Marilyn taught me that beauty isn't about what you wear. It's about what you do. Daniel, the boy who wouldn't smile, became a therapist specializing in grief counseling for children. Marilyn sat with me until I laughed. She showed me that joy was still possible, even after losing everything. Sarah, who asked if Marilyn ever stopped hoping, became the director of the Hollygrove Orphanage herself. I wanted to be for other kids what Marilyn was for me: someone who sees them. After Marilyn died in 1962, the children at Hollygrove held a memorial service. They placed 50 teddy bears at the front of the room. Each one represented a child whose life Marilyn had touched that December day in 1954. Mrs. Patterson, in her eulogy, said something that captured the truth of who Marilyn really was. The world knew her as a star. We knew her as a woman who never forgot where she came from. She could have hidden her past. She could have pretended the orphanage never existed. Instead, she came back, and she made 50 children believe they could become anything. In 1985, the Hollygrove Orphanage was renamed. It's now called the Hollygrove Marilyn Monroe Center. On the wall of the entrance hangs a plaque with Marilyn's words from that December morning: "Your past doesn't define your future. Where you start doesn't determine where you finish." And in the building's small museum, carefully preserved in a glass case, is one of the original teddy bears from 1954. The plaque beneath it reads, "A gift from Marilyn Monroe to remind 50 children that they were never invisible." The story of Marilyn's visit to Hollygrove teaches us something profound about fame and humanity. It reminds us that the truest measure of a person isn't how high they climb, but whether they reach back down to help others up. Marilyn Monroe could have hidden her past. She could have been ashamed of her time in the orphanage. Instead, she embraced it. She returned to the place that had marked her with pain and transformed it into a place of hope. She didn't just give those children teddy bears. She gave them something far more valuable: the belief that they mattered, that they were seen, that their stories weren't over. And maybe that's the most beautiful legacy anyone can leave behind. Not the movies they made or the awards they won, but the children they inspired, the hearts they touched, the hope they planted. Because 50 children went to bed that December night clutching teddy bears and believing for the first time that maybe they weren't invisible after all, maybe they were seen, maybe they mattered, and that belief changed everything. If this story of compassion and never forgetting where you came from moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that their past doesn't define their future. Have you ever had someone believe in you when nobody else did? Let us know in the comments. And subscribe for more untold stories about the hearts behind Hollywood's brightest stars.